That we have all members present. Everyone's still on the Kool-Aid and wanting to be at all these meetings. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? All right. We have a motion and then a second from Ms. Powers. All those in favor say aye. All right. All those opposed? All right. We're moving on with our agenda. You also should have a copy of the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any additions, changes, anything in those minutes? Motion to approve from Mr. Pennings. Second from Ms. Powers. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, we're moving on. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Torres, who has so graciously stayed for this meeting. You get mad. We just have to agree to this just because you've sat here for 3 hours, right? But I'll turn it over to you. A little bit of
brownie points. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Due to the late hour, I will try to limit my presentation to approximately an hour.
Nice, Ben. Nice.
I'm joking, only 45 minutes. So, no, it won't be. E-meeting. E-meeting is something that TSBA provides as a service to our districts at a very low cost, and it is basically an online meeting portal. It's secured by a 256-bit encryption, password protected. It's somewhere where anyone can access the information on the board, the staff, from any type of device on any type of browser at any time. So kind of getting into the nuts and bolts, I wanted to hit a few highlights of what e-meeting does. So when you log into e-meeting, you see this screen right here. The first thing I want to highlight is up there at the top left corner. That lists all the active meetings you have. So if you're a board member coming in, whether it's a board meeting, it's a committee meeting, up in there in top left corner, if you don't mind, I kind of move around. Top left corner, that's where your meeting's going to be. Quick access, you can click on it, you can get to all the materials. Calendar. This calendar syncs across everybody's accounts. So the district, the board, the staff, they can place all the events in this one calendar, and anybody can access them at any time. It also populates the calendar with meetings and agenda items. So if you want to go to next month and see all the different committee meetings you have and all the different agenda items, you can go, you can click on it, and access that information right away. Up here in the top portion, we have switch agency. This is a feature that has recently been added. There are some entities, such as Dayton City Schools, where the school board is also the city council. So if they want to have two different accounts, they could, and they could just switch back and forth. It won't apply to you all, but it's something, another added feature. One of the biggest things that e-meeting goes with is our policy service. If you see on the side, you'll see the links. You can put any link you want to up there. One of the ones we recommend you link to is your board policy manual. So at any time during the meeting, you want to access your manual, it is literally link manual, and your manual pulls up online. So you have your manual, you have your board meeting minutes, you have your attachments, your agenda items. The next thing I want to hit is the benefits to the staff. Right now, the staff develops a giant board packet that averages probably 80 to 100 pages. Average. So when that changes and a new attachment's added, what happens? You get a new packet. If the packet has already been mailed out, when you get to the board meeting, you have a completely new packet. With everything reorganized, new agenda items moved around. Well, with this system, we address that on the front end. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the search option. And we're going to get to that. This all ties into the packet in the meeting, the search option. So when you develop an agenda, you put in your attachments, you put everything in there. This system archives the information. You can go in and literally search all your packets, all your minutes, all your attachments at one time, and it will pull up those keywords or those time and dates, and I'll kind of show you the things you can drill down into. So if next year you say, I want to buy a bus, how much did we pay for that bus last year? You can go to the search item, search bus contracts, and it will pull up the information. If you want to search the motion, you can pull up the motion. You can even pull up who voted and how they voted. Moving on to the goals, preferences section. You have your 7 keys. Those are your goals. This system is built, if you'll notice at the bottom, goals are listed out. You can tie individual agenda items to goals, to your keys, and at the end of the year, pull a report on each of the individual keys, and you will list all the different agenda items and the actions and the steps you took during the year in regards to that one key. That's the goal function that I think you all would find really helpful as you move forward. For your staff to create a new meeting, they simply press a button, and it will pre-populate an agenda that they develop. What we'll do is we'll come in and train them, and we can help them develop agenda templates. They'll have a regular meeting, a special meeting agenda. They can have a facilities agenda. They can have a policy agenda already pre-programmed in there. They hit a button, it auto-generates that agenda, pops up, and then they can go in and fill in the spaces. Down here at the bottom, there's a guide. It's always accessible. We update this guide regularly. You don't have to do anything if we update the guide. We update it, it pre-populates into your system. The information is always current, always there. You'll notice there's a few things across the top here that I'm going to hit. The first one, and the most important, is to send email notification. When you get a new meeting, when the packet's done, they simply have to hit a button, and it will send each of you an email saying the packet is ready, go online. If there's an update and a new agenda item, they load the attachment and the agenda item into e-meeting. They hit this email, you get a notification that the packet has been updated. They can even type in specifics of what it was, and you can go in and view that. The goals we kind of discussed already, and switch agency. Here's the search function I wanted to talk to you all about. You can literally drill down into anything you want to search. Meeting titles, who the speaker was, the rationale comments. You can even search the attachments. Now with this system, you can upload any files as an attachment, a PDF, a PowerPoint, a Word document, an image, a video. You can link. It all goes in there. There's no storage limit. The biggest thing, I believe it's either 25 megs or 50 megs, the size of the file, the upload file. That's the limit. As far as how many of those, you could do 25 megs on each attachment, all you want. It's just that one upload. You can even search specific dates. So it depends on how specific you want to get. As you start using this and your data builds in the system, that's when it becomes more and more valuable. Some systems have been using this for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So they can literally go in and search board minutes, attachments for that time frame. We just talked through this. Here is the backside of the agenda page. This is how the staff creates an agenda. They go in, and this is something that'll already be programmed in. They'll hit a button, and they'll pre-populate what you all usually do. And then based on that, you can add an agenda item. When you add an agenda item, it'll pop up the name, what you want to name it, where you want to place it. If you want to add any attachments, you can even pre-program motions into this. So, for instance, motion made to approve whatever that agenda item is. And then during the meeting, they simply click, Mr. Bates made the motion, Mr. Atkinson made the second, and they pick how everybody voted, and it spits out the report, and they can print the minutes. And it's already done. There is a feature for electronic voting if you want to take it one step further, where each of you, they open the voting, each of you vote, it projects on the screen, and you record the voting that way. That's also an option. Some districts use it, some don't. It depends on how tech savvy individual board members are. The one benefit I see that will help the staff is if you want to change the agenda item around or you want to add something at the last minute, if they put it literally right there in the middle, everything underneath that automatically repopulates, and the agenda item is fixed automatically. So they don't have to go down there and renumber everything. All the attachments marry up with the items. Everything that goes along with it, it already pre-populates. It does it at one time. They can even move agenda items from the bottom to the top. It reorders everything. You'll see right here under President's Report, it'll even reorder the items underneath that main item. If you want to move that one individual 4B to, let's say, item 10, you can move that individual thing to item 10, and everything under that will move along with it and repopulate to include attachments.
And we haven't even gotten to the part that I like yet.
So, active, inactive, this is where you can put an agenda together, and if they want to, if the board decides to pull it at the last minute, they can pull it from the agenda but not lose the attachments and not lose all the discussion, the rationale associated with that. It literally just pulls it out and sets it over to the side, and it's there for as long as they want it. So if you decide we're going to put it on the agenda, you have everything ready, and at the last minute they pull it off, you can just pull it off and shelve it until you're ready to address it as a board, and you don't lose anything associated with it. It stays there. As you can see, this is the outline. And then finally, the download in Word. Here's another option. Depending on what you select, you can download an entire agenda and the information in a Word document if you so choose. It's up to the individual board. I wanted to show you, this is what attachments, if you select attachments, this is what attachments look like. It will populate all the attachment items under each individual. There's a feature for attachments. There's a public page that goes along with this. You can make attachments public, or you can make them private, or you can set them to specific users. So for instance, if you in a board meeting have a section that addresses the budget and another section that addresses a hearing, the board deciding whether they want to hear an appeal on a SDHA, you can put the SDHA information in that packet, mark it as private, and the only people that can see it are the board members, the superintendent, and the board attorney. We even have roles for the board attorney. And like I said, it's password protected. It's got that 256-bit encryption on there. So it's not like anybody's going to break in and view that information. Manage meeting. This is where the meeting manager, your secretary, or whoever runs the meeting goes, and they pull up this lovely screen. This is what the meeting will look like to board members as you go along. As you can see on the left side, all the different actions are there. You got the title, and I'm going to show you some examples a little later on of how this white space can be populated with information. So the first thing, title, who's speaking, leading. Leading is where you can select on your computer a check mark, and all you do is follow along in the meeting. Every time the leading manager clicks to a new screen, you're automatically taken to a new screen. If you want to go to a different item in the agenda, you can go to a different item in the agenda, click on leading. As soon as they update theirs, it'll refresh your screen and bring you immediately back to where the board is as a body. Take action. This is where you take action, you vote.
Leading is basically what we used to call the sit back and let me drive button, because you just sit back and it just does everything for you, and you just watch.
Exactly. Discussion. You can add discussion items and rationale to this. Take attendance. The take attendance something is very useful. This allows the board secretary or Dr. Marzak to take the attendance when the people were there, and based on the attendance, it auto-populates who can vote at the meeting. Attachments. You can click on this. If you have multiple attachments, it lists all the attachments. And then notes. Notes is an item individual to each user. A user can go in on each individual section, type in a note about something, and it stays with that section. There's a report to where you can actually pull up all the notes you have for an individual meeting if you wanted to. If you have any questions, let me know. I am running through this a little quick.
That's what I like.
So you can see, I wanted to bring up this example. This individual budget item, this is Germantown, I believe. If you see on the right side, you see all the amendments? They're all listed out there as attachments. So everything goes with that one individual item. So if you have multiple amendments, you can add multiple amendments. If you had something added at the last minute, all they have to do is add it to that agenda item, and you automatically see it across the board. Everybody has access to it at the same time. Attachments, you can see there's 3 listed up there. There's 3 on the side. And there's the notes feature again. The notes feature comes up on every screen. And when you type in the note, if you have a note, it will list all the notes out right here on the right side so you can see them. Just like a sticky note, basically. So here's an example of what can be populated. So you have the title, the recommended motion, motion to adopt the agenda. The actions taken, this was pre-programmed in there. And when they clicked on the button, it automatically filled Lottie Ryan's and a second by Sheila Cox. They didn't have to type that in. They just selected who made the motion, who made the second, and they indicated how they voted. And it all pops up there. It all populates in the minutes. At the end of the board meeting, the board secretary can hit minute report. It prints out all the minutes, all the actions, who voted, how they voted. And it's available right there. And also it archives, so you can always go back and see what happened and what took place. There's also options to add discussion. And another key benefit to this, does everybody remember in orientation, parliamentary procedure, the ladder of parliamentary procedure? This has a built-in ladder. So if you make a motion, it has an option to make a subsidiary motion. But you can't go back in this program and edit the motion until you address the subsidiary motion. So it'll literally walk you up the ladder and walk you back down so you don't get out of order of any of your motions. You can amend a motion, and then if you amend the motion, it automatically feeds the information into the main motion. So you always have that information walking up and walking down. One of the final things I'm going to talk about is the tools and reports. The links, like I said, the board policy, it's always available. The reports, you have an attachment, manage notes, manage agenda. There's so many different options available that you can use to get information. On the right side, you'll see goals, preferences. You can do a search or do summary reports. Based on my assessment, you'll look at the goals a lot, and you may do a lot of searching as more meetings happen. So those are some of the things you'll use the most. I went through it really quick, but if you got any questions, let me know.
Tell them the price, Ben.
I guess it comes down to the price, right? So since you are a policy subscriber now, we waive the setup fee, which is $500. It's $1,500 for the setup fee, and that includes the first year, $1,500 annually after that. That includes any updates that we do, any new program that comes out through e-meeting. We don't charge for updates. You get it. If you have a recommendation on something to be included, tell us. We send it to the developer, and we put it on our long list of things that we want to see updated. We continually do updates to the program.
We'll save that in paper alone.
Most boards spend $3,000 to $4,000 a year in board pack if they're doing paper board packets. $3,000 to $4,000 a year in paper, time, postage, just the administrative cost of doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. I think this is a great idea. I'm always reluctant for us to spend money on ourselves, but I think we've got a job to do, and if we're spending money that makes us better managers or helps us to exercise our oversight duties, then I think it's probably money well spent. I think this would be a valuable tool for us to have. I do want to ask just a couple questions. One, how would this help us with the public? Would there be some sort of link on our website where they would have some public version of all this?
If I can address that, you'll actually have a public page, and then once the meeting is completed, let's say the agenda gets set, the board secretary can make that agenda public, and it goes to, you have your very own special public e-meeting page. You'll put a link to it on your website, and it lists a continuous list of all the agenda items you have once you start using this system. They can click on it, they can see the agenda, they can see the public attachments that you have decided to make public, they can see that information.
So basically, on our website, like now, it's a little bit, now.
So on
There's
our
a lot of
website,
information, it's kind of all over the place. But, so the future would be that if the public wanted to find out what the agenda, they would probably be somewhere on the site, and they would just click on that, and it would take them to this site, and they would basically kind of have a menu or something to be.
so you know how we have the drop-down menu that's school board meetings, school board committees? That would be merged to one word, it's school board meetings and committees. When you click that, it will go right to this page. There
Yeah.
won't be a site.
And
It'll go
it'll be
right
kind
here.
of a user-friendly type menu or something.
Yeah, it's
for
called a
them to-
redirect link.
And I guess they'll have linked to our upcoming agenda as well as
Once you make that
minutes.
upcoming agenda public.
It's all
Okay.
there.
But then past minutes, if they wanted to go through past minutes, we would have that available
All there.
for them.
Everything.
Minutes, attachments,
Always.
That is great. Now, would they also, I know, had the calendar, would that be a feature for the public? Where they would see kind of a calendar of upcoming meetings and they would just click on the meeting, it would take them to the
they wouldn't see the
agenda?
calendar. The calendar is
Okay,
directly
I didn't
based on
know.
the individual users and what you all put into the calendar.
okay. And then the second question is, we all, from a technology standpoint, we have different, what we're comfortable with. But as far as if maybe, my preference is, I like the online stuff, but I still want to have a paper agenda. How would that work? Would that just be a matter of staffing, that our staff would print a paper version of this?
That option, download in Word, they can select all the different items you want. For instance, if you just want the agenda and the attachments, they can select those, hit download in Word, and it actually just, based on what they put in, creates that Word document.
Okay, so our board secretary could handle, I guess if there was an individual preference of any members that wants a paper version.
I
so.
would prefer we get away from that for the cost, but we could do it in the interim for people that are uncomfortable. But one of the things that I'll tell you, we had this in Oak Ridge before I was hired. And so I was acclimated this when I got to Oak Ridge. When they first got it, there were a couple veteran board members that were not comfortable with technology. By the time I got there, they were no longer printing agendas. They were just doing it online, and they were fine with it.
And like I said, it's internet-based, so it's available literally on any type of a device. Chromebook, Apple, iPad, iPhone, Android phone, any type of device. If you can get to the internet, you can get to this.
To increase efficiency and to really more transparency, more recently updated and correct information, my recommendation is your superintendent is to adopt the e-meetings platform.
How does it work with Motorola?
Good question.
I should have had a caveat, any smartphone, I guess, would be the caveat to that.
Works beautifully on your iPad.
Yes.
Check with us afterwards. We'll make it work.
You wouldn't have to. Because once, if you, as they vote, if you put it in the system how they voted, you'd be removing an entire step, because at the end, you can print the minutes off, and it's already got that information pre-populated of who made the motion, who made the second, and how everybody voted.
Inside the web-based
Yep.
platform. So you wouldn't have to vote on the boxes in there. You wouldn't have to wait for the motion. It's already done inside the platform.
Well, as Dr. Marzak so politely put it, us elderly technology
I said veteran.
veterans,
Veterans.
and I'm being serious now, I even have trouble with, I just got this a year ago. How hard is this to pick up and learn?
It's not hard, because you as a board member, let me go back a few screens. I got all my arrows, and I'll show you. You as a board member, when you log in, maybe it's a little bit further back than anticipated. That's what you'll see, is this screen. And all you have to do as a board member is click on the meeting that you want, and it will take you.
You won't see any of this.
You won't see any of this. It will take you to this screen right here.
Yep.
And you can literally, these are live linked. You can literally just click on any of these and it will take you to that agenda item and all the supporting documents and everything that goes along with it. The staff can type in the rationale and their recommendation inside the platform and present it that way.
So now where I have to go to SharePoint and then documents and all that, I just do kind of 2 clicks and I'm there.
You just go to emeetings.tsba.net, you put in your email, your password, and you go right to it. Done.
Thank you. I'll be living at his house for a while.
Come on. I got room.
Okay, just, I guess logistically to make, obviously I like it, so that's not the issue here. I mean, I guess I'm still stuck that we did spend a lot of money on this stuff here. And it seems like most of these pretty much just become a really expensive microphone at that point. I mean, I'm obviously, technology is not my issue, but I want to be sensitive to the fact that, I mean, because this does mean that pretty much everybody up here is going to need a device that they're not only capable of. I don't think you're going to want to be looking at an agenda on your phone and trying to vote on that. So everybody up here is going to need something probably larger than an iPad, probably a device so you can actually look at some of these things in a screen like a laptop or some other kind of computer screen. Is that how most people are handling this?
A lot of them use iPads or use tablets or small Chromebooks or small devices.
Okay.
Because the way it's set up, it's a web-based platform, so it expands or collapses based on the size of your browser and your screen. And the way the attachments are set up, they're set up to open
Okay.
separately. So you can open them literally in a new window, or if you choose to, you can download them to your computer and have them available. If you want, obviously, a laptop, you can have multiple screens down at the bottom, you can have tabs. It's whatever works for your preference, but
In Oak Ridge, all the board members had iPads and they were fine with it.
Really?
Yes.
I did see one thing on there. They said some notes. I know one thing here, even though I am mostly about 99% electronic, I like having the kind of the agenda sheet, and I take notes. Does this have the ability for me to take personal notes, or does it get attached to kind of the public thing?
it only gets attached to your
To
personal
my
user
version
ID.
of it?
Yep.
Okay.
And you
So
can go back and search your notes at any time.
no one else sees your notes but you.
Okay. All right.
So how it would work, we would be at the meeting, and as we're going through the agenda items, we would be kind of looking at our iPad. And when we get ready to vote, we would click on our iPad to vote yes or no.
Yes.
So we wouldn't be pushing a button anymore.
No. You just push a button on your screen, not on the,
And I guess, so these screens would just be for presentation purposes. We wouldn't see this agenda on it.
You would see-
Or I guess if somebody had it logged in,
You
we
would
could see the same
this for
thing.
the public. That's what we usually recommend, is that the public, you have just something projected so the public can see the agenda items as well. And as you click through, the public can see the rationale, the public can see how everybody voted. It's all live, instantaneous.
Right. And then the other question I had, is there like an orientation service or something that comes with this, that somebody would come and maybe walk us through this, or how does that usually work?
So since you are a policy subscriber, we waive the service fee, but we will still come down. It usually takes 2 to 3 hours. We sit down with the meeting manager, generally the secretary, the superintendent. Well, you already know the system, but the people who will be building the agendas, we sit down with them for 2 to 3 hours. We train them, we help
Got all the
build.
backdoor stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The templates, and then we spend after that, about 45 minutes with the board members, showing them how to log in, how to change their password, get familiar with the platform and the interface, and the big things you need to know. This is where you go to get to your policy manual. This is how you access attachments. This is how you create notes.
And so we could set that up maybe like an hour before a meeting to have that orientation.
We prefer to do it on meeting days because we'll come in about noon, 1 o'clock, meet with the staff, take a small break, meet with the board, and the board doesn't have to come in at a separate time. They can just come in a little early and go straight into the board meeting.
But
Okay.
the benefit to you, Mr. Chairman, is, as we've kind of talked about after the meetings, submitting the agenda, going back and forth, who voted what, this is correct, take a look back at this one, that all goes away. Because the minute the meeting is over, publish the meeting minutes, it's all done. Because it happens concurrently while the meeting is taking place. And the system won't allow you to produce something incorrectly.
So we got good, reliable
Yes.
records or good, reliable minutes.
Yes.
That's good.
So when the meeting's over, we're done.
Any further discussion? Do we have a recommendation, or do we want to vote? If you want to.
Make a motion to approve, get this system.
All right. We have a first and a second. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? All right. That passes.
Madam Chairman.
3 hours were well worth it.
I would just ask, by the time it gets to the board, that we have some understanding of how we would budget that. Now, I guess we've got an existing budget for the school board, just to make sure
We do.
have sufficient funds for that.
$1,500, yeah, we're okay.
Okay.
We're good. When do you want to begin?
Well, it
Because
has
this will go to the
full
October board meeting. Minutes will be approved in November. Do you want to start this in December? Do you want to start in January?
Because I'll be back from my cruise refresh.
10-4, is that okay? That's one person. Everybody else okay with December? Start at the December committee meetings? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, our next item, staff recommendations. Ms. Stanton has graciously stayed with us, so we'll hear policy 6.412 from her.
I will be very brief. Basically, we are going back to the TSBA policy with this one. The reason is our previous policy did not include stocking EpiPens because we did not have that capability. I was able to find a free source for EpiPens through a pharmaceutical company that has a program, EpiPens for Schools, and they provide all 4 EpiPens altogether for every school in the district. So we already have those. We've secured those. We got the prescription written by Dr. Ball, who's our medical consultant. But before I can put them in the schools, I need the policy in place. So this is the TSBA model policy for that. Do y'all have any questions?
You were actually presented with two, both the current Murray County policy and the TSBA policy.
Okay.
So we're recommending to adopt the TSBA policy because it does have the EpiPen language included.
The only thing I would say, in all these policies we're looking at tonight to approve and to update, please look at those, and, because most of them have director, not superintendent of schools. As long as we're looking at them, I think we should change that.
Once the review is done, TSBA is going to do that for us on the online policy manual en masse. They're going to take every director of schools and change it to superintendent. As we're changing these, we're doing that. But once all the reviews are done of all the sections, TSBA is going to do that online for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve? All right, we have a first, we have a second. Second from Ms. Powers. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that one passes. Moving on, our next one is homebound instruction.
I'll take that one from Mr.
Okay.
Keelan. There was additional language in this one added to lines 24, 25, and 26. It's basically concerning homebound instruction for eligible 504 students. The language was added, there was a resolution agreement due to an OCR complaint, and so this language was part of that resolution to add it to this policy.
Any discussion? Do we have a motion to approve the revised one? All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Ms. Martin. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, that one passes as well. Moving on, policy 2.300.
I'll be Brenda Hammond as well. This language is added here as the ESSA regulations now state that we have to say in our policy that we have procedures for comparability. And so the two lines were added just saying that we're going to develop procedures which we actually already have in a separate document that's not in policy, but that the superintendent does enforce.
Any questions? Any discussion on this? I did have one question. I think we have recently adopted a system-wide salary schedule with regards to teachers. Have we adopted one with regards to principals and other support personnel as well?
Not a system-wide type salary schedule.
That's one of the things we're talking to Byron Hedrick with Lean Frog about. So we're currently trying to get something in time for budget season for next year to kind of determine where we sit with regards to recommendations on administrative salary schedules for principals and assistant principals.
Does anyone know when the last time we adopted one would have been?
We've never really adopted a salary schedule. There's a formula that's been used for principals that was in the negotiated contract years ago. Of course, if someone calls, we tell them how we get that formula, but it's based on their degree, their administrative experience, as well as number of teachers that they supervise.
Okay. But we're not under that anymore, correct? So we're not technically bound by that.
Right.
And we haven't put anything in place in the interim. Is
No.
that correct? So we're kind of in violation of our own policy at this point.
Well, yeah, because we never really had a salary schedule at all. It was basically just how the formula was created to get the salary amount.
And it's really kind of rough on principals because if you don't have the enrollment and you lose a teacher, your salary drops. And so it's kind of unstable for principals as far as, how much am I going to be making from year to year? So it's kind of difficult.
Isn't that based on the year before, though? I mean, usually that formula
No.
from the previous year?
No, we update it immediately.
Okay.
How quickly do you think Byron will have something to us on that?
I have no idea. What he's been trying to do, he's been trying to establish salary schedules to help us with the entire district. But the state of Tennessee has each of those listed by a database, and you have to buy by database, and there could literally be 750 databases. So he's trying to work with the state of Tennessee to see other systems in the state have asked for this as well. So he's trying to work with the state to see if he can do a batch purchase and then spread that cost out over the multiple systems that have asked. But no word yet on where he is with that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Beaver? Was a head nod? Was it a head nod from you as the second, Mr. Beaver? Okay. I'm trying to spread it around. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Moving on to policy 4.601, volunteers.
And this policy came about after the last board meeting. There were some questions about volunteers and being approved by the board after a season was over or after they were already involved with that team. In my research, I found nothing that told me that the board had to approve a volunteer. That's basically a personnel decision. School volunteers and non-faculty coaches are a personnel decision. We have changed the wording on line 39 of this to give the superintendent and/or his designee the right to approve. And then what we would do procedurally is every month you all get a personnel report from the HR department. We would list those school volunteers and those non-faculty coaches as part of that personnel report. So you would still get it as an FYI and be informed. However, you wouldn't have voting rights anymore, and as a personnel decision, it's probably better to do it just by the personnel report.
I can agree with that. What I would like to see added here, as you remember at the last meeting, the athletic director was not sure if that volunteer coach had participated or not in anything before her background check came back. I would like to see some language in here that says simply that all criminal or history background checks must be completed before they can participate in any way. I'd like to see that added in the policy so it's clear, and if you get somebody volunteering to coach, we can give them a copy of the policy if you want, so they know for sure. Thank you.
I would also like to see some language that they're in compliance with TSSAA or whatever the governing body is, because I think that was another issue that we ran into. And I'm going to be very frank about this, because we delegate a lot of responsibility to staff, and I don't always trust everybody is crossing all their I's and dotting their I's and crossing their T's at this point. So, it ultimately comes down to the superintendent on this one.
It is, and I took care of that situation.
Okay. Any other additions to this policy? Mr. Moore?
The only thing I would add is I love it when something doesn't have to come before the board, because we really don't need to be doing it. Thank you.
Do we want to punt this until next month when we have the actual language written out, or do you want to?
Basically, we're just wanting them
Okay.
to be contingent upon their background check before they can actually volunteer. Does it already say that? Which line? And it's already on line 40.
Ms. Chair?
So really, what I need to do is reinforce that.
That's what I was going to ask for. It clearly says in the policy, and if we adopt this, it clearly says that it is contingent upon these things. So
I'll reinforce that.
as long as that's clear in procedure, that satisfies it for me, because it is very clear in policy.
And then we could add the TSSAA language to that line as well. Right, it's already in the athletic handbook, but we can also put it in the policy. Right.
Do we have a motion to approve as, with the addition with the governing body? Motion to approve from Mr. Pennings. Do we have a second? Second. Mr. Bates?
I was just going to say, I'm still, I see that provision, but I think that could be cleaned up and tightened up some. It says that they can approve the volunteer coach assignments contingent upon satisfactory background check results. To me, that's an indication that we're going to go ahead and tentatively approve you, and they could go ahead and start, but there's a string attached. It's conditioned that maybe later on the background check comes back, and then you would kind of get that revoked. But I think what Mr. Pennings, what his intent is to make that clear that you don't get to start until those background check comes back and it's proved. Not that you've got some like conditional approval that you can go ahead and start, and then we'll wait till the background check comes back, and then we might revoke that. So I think it could be, I think we're all on the same page. I still think that language could be tightened up, and I think Ms. Hargrove could probably do a fantastic job of cleaning that up for us. So I would still recommend that.
The superintendent and/or his designee will approve the activation of an individual volunteer coach assignment contingent upon satisfactory background check results.
Prior to interaction with.
Do what?
students.
I would say the language needs to be, no volunteer coach shall begin until the superintendent or his designee has verified that they have passed all required background checks. So that's
Fine
how
with me.
clear I would want to make it.
Fine with me.
Yeah, I just want to make it perfectly clear to everybody, the person volunteering and the person who has to approve it, that, look, you can't let them come in there and be interacting with the children until you have your background check till I have your background check and it's approved.
And that's a clear message to the principals that a coach cannot begin until Dr. Hargrove contacts them. That's easy. There's nothing wrong with that. That's simple.
Did you get that language?
Just like an employee in the district.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. The next item was policy 3.216, naming of new facilities. And we actually, at the last meeting, had set up a subcommittee to work on that. Due to fall break and conflicts, that subcommittee was not able to meet and bring a recommendation forward. So they will have to come back at another policy meeting.
Oh, I had a question on that.
Yes.
I know we had a subcommittee, and I just want to make sure procedurally, since we reshuffled our committees, do we need to do anything with the subcommittees? Or can we just leave them the way they were? I didn't know if that changed with the rollover of the new committees, or if they had to be appointed anew.
I mean, I think that'd be the will of the chair and the committee if they wanted to change that, but I think they could probably proceed on, because we could have non-members part of the subcommittee to report back to the committee, but I think it would still need to go through that committee for a final approval.
Just wanted to make sure we're proceeding appropriately. Thank you.
Mr. Pennings?
Would you recommend that we table this for now, or
I would.
did I make a motion we table this for till our next, till the committee's done making their report?
And just for clarification for parliamentary procedure, I think what your intent is to continue it until the next meeting. Technically, if we table it, when you all come back, you have to have another motion to untable it and then start all over again. So I think the intent is to continue. And I'm sorry, I just went to my new board chair orientation. They were hammering on that, so I
See,
thought
if I
that
had
passed
that
it
new
along.
system, I couldn't have made a motion that
Yeah.
wasn't legal.
So let me ask this of the board. So if we're going to continue, then that means that this board policy is still in effect. We have set the meeting for the request that came based on the request of a member of the community to rename Spring Hill Elementary School. We've established that meeting for next week.
But at the meeting, we can postpone that too, at the regular board meeting, can't we?
Because all we're doing is bringing to you a proposal
Right,
to take under consideration.
right.
That's it.
Mr. Moore, did you, what? I'm just crying on the inside. Okay. We have a motion to continue this. Do we have a second? Yes. Second from Mr. Beaver. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right. The next item is policy 6.204, attendance of non-resident students. And I think this was actually, came up with regards to what we charge for non-resident students in tuition. And Dr. Woodard has provided us some information on tuition in other areas. And thank you for sticking with us as well, Dr. Woodard.
Oh, thanks, bro. Appreciate it. You're still here.
Good evening.
Hey, at least we're not playing hooky, you know, we won't go down on the bad attendance, so.
We don't want that. So you can see here, here's a comparison of counties with similar sizes, some smaller, some larger, with regard to what students are paying for out-of-county tuition. Currently, we charge $1,000. We allow parents to pay that into 2 increments, $500 for first semester and $500 for second semester. Right now, that only impacts about 14. We have about 14 families who are paying out-of-county tuition, so it's about $14,000. We have collected from 11 families, and we have 3 who have not paid full tuition up to this point. And so Of the 3 who've not paid, 2 of those 3 have made payments, and we have 1 who have not paid anything, but we're working on that. We've sent letters, et cetera, so. But this impacts a very small number of individuals, so it is not large. We think, though, with the implementation of our one-to-one initiative that Dr. Marzek's going to roll out soon, we believe that we will have lots of people coming across county lines, and we think it will be a wise move at this point to increase the cost of out-of-county tuition to $2,000. And that will be the recommendation that we have for this board at this time, is that we make it $2,000 for out-of-county residents.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess a couple of things on this.
Yes, sir.
Where does the $2,000 come from? I just, as a figure. Is it based on anything, or are there some actual costs we're looking at, or is this just, we're going to raise the number?
So when we look at how much we get from the state versus how much we're paying per pupil, so we get roughly about $6,240 from the state. We're spending about $9,106. So as students come in and we only charge them $1,000, then our per pupil cost on that student is $7,240. So that means we're taking additional GP dollars to make up that difference per student, if you will. That's a simple way to look at it. When we start to implement our one-to-one program and we start talking about buying district devices for kids at a cost of, I quoted you guys around $700, $750 per student. That per pupil, it's not going to rise because other things are going to go away to offset that cost. But it's easy to see that if we give that $750 per student, there's still a gap between the $9,106 when we start to enter down that foray. So my goal is for us to get closer to tuition breaking us even at $9,106 per student. That's my goal.
So I guess that leads to kind of 2 other questions there, and it goes back to that first one. I don't understand at what point we would ever take a loss and ask a student to come in from out of county.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we do that? Why are we funding this out of our fund to bring in other students from somewhere else?
We don't bring in kids, they come.
They request to come.
They request to come.
Okay, but we're allowing them to at a loss. That means we're bringing them in. I mean, we could mince words on that.
Yeah, basically.
Why would we ever do that?
Don't know. It's kind of been a practice that has gone on for a while.
No.
And,
So that, I mean, I guess this gets back to why I'm saying, why are we charging? Why would we not, at
You- and
least
you'll-
at a starting point, look
you'll-
at what we're reimbursed by the state,
Yeah.
add what our cost is, and that's our starting, that's a bare minimum is to break even. Why would we take a loss on this?
And right now, that would be about $2,700 per student.
Okay, why would we not be charging that?
We can if you guys want to. That's your call.
No, it's not, because this is an important thing here.
Yeah.
Why are we absorbing this cost? What are we gaining from this as a system?
What was previous board action? Why only charge $1,000 per
Well,
student?
Then, off the bat, I would be opposed to any of this if it doesn't start with us meeting our bare cost.
Okay.
Because to me,
That's fair.
that's a dollar.
That's fair.
That's
yeah.
several $1,000s that are not going to our other students that we are charged with taking care of. And that bothers me.
Okay.
So that makes it pretty clear where I stand on this, but I do not want to take on a burden that is taking dollars away from the students we are charged with taking care of. Because that's what we're doing when we do anything less than the difference of what the state reimburses and what it costs us to put a student in this county. Seems simple to me.
Other systems do that.
This isn't okay with me. Like, I want to take really good care of my own
Yeah.
before I take on somebody else.
Yeah.
And we got lots of good things and we need every penny. This is not okay with me.
Sure.
How do we fix this? Through policy, just,
Mhm.
okay, 'cause this is not okay. Really? Really? Where did this business model come from?
We acquired it
Right.
when we were hired.
This has
That's
been
why we're
around-
looking
this has
at
been
it.
around for a long time.
Yeah, that's why we're
So-
looking at it.
We're
Yeah.
bringing this to your attention. We want you to know what is happening. And, we're making the recommendation that we raise this.
But I mean, really, Murray County wasn't a desirable county to move into if you were from out of county over a year ago. People weren't coming from out of county. Now they are. They want to come here. We're a hot system. So, That's why we're talking about this.
Is it still my turn, or do you want to pass it on? Well, I'm just looking, I mean, apparently other counties, some counties say we do not accept out-of-county. So I
Correct.
think that is an option, which I have, unless I'm persuaded as to why I need to take care of another county where that family is paying property taxes, I need to be persuaded what the benefit is. If you persuade me, I'm okay with letting them in, but this needs to be a break even.
Okay? That's fine with
I'm
us.
paying, we're paying you to make these decisions to make our county great. I'm not paying you to take someone else's kid.
Yeah, if you want to go from 1,000 to 2,700 per kid, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
And that's gonna be.
That's a break-even number.
Okay. Persuade me then why that's even better. I mean, why, I guess this is a motivated child that the parents would care enough to try to put them in a better system. I guess this is a good thing.
Yep. And not only that, but what I'm starting to find is, like around Lewis, Hickman County, some of the parents are so close on the county line, it's actually closer to come to a Murray County school than go to their own school in Hickman or Lewis County.
But they're so, well.
And so they want to come here. And then they like it here. They also like the academics. They also like what we're doing.
Or they work in this county.
Yeah.
So they work here,
Okay, and
and
that's
they want
where-
their kids in the county because they work here.
Yeah.
But again, we're talking about 14 people
Now.
now. But we think that, we go 1-to-1, that could be a big boom. That could grow tremendously once we go 1-to-1.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. And I agree with Mr. Moore. I think that I mean, we want to try to attract families and we want to do that sort of thing, but if we do have the welcome mat out, I think it probably needs to be a starting point that we don't want to go in the hole. We don't want to lose money in that type of situation.
Right.
I guess for me, I'm trying to figure out, what is, and I think that's probably what everybody's concerns is, what is the fair and reasonable amount, where we are kind of made whole and we're not losing money in that situation. I still can't wrap my mind around the state numbers, because if I do the math, we approved a budget, an operating budget, and maybe recall, I think we approved a budget of $90 million. And if you do the math, we've got 12,500 kids roughly. That's $7,200. So I guess that's where I'm beginning with the starting point of, okay, trying to figure out what is the amount that we are spending per pupil, and if we're getting 6,000 or how much? So around 6,000 in BEP money, maybe it's not as like we're losing money as much as maybe what we think. I don't know. But I just want to know kind of what it, it is what it is at the end of the day. I think another thing that we kind of have to kind of keep in mind is it doesn't necessarily, and it depends on a case-by-case basis, but it doesn't necessarily translate that I think if you put another kid in the classroom, that you've incurred another $7,000 in expense. And so walk with me just for a moment. If you've got a classroom that, say, maybe the max size is, say, 25, that's the max number of students in that classroom. And that particular classroom has 3 extra seats available, okay? So you're already paying the teacher to teach those 23 students. You're already paying the cafeteria workers. You're already paying the bus drivers. You're doing all of those things. But you just got 3 extra seats in that classroom. If you add another student, if another student comes in and you get their BEP money of around $6,000, your expenses didn't change at all. In fact, probably taking that child, you don't have to pay for a bus because they have to provide their own transportation. So there's really no, unless I'm missing something. Now, what the director pointed out, I think that's a valid point, like if we start buying devices. But right now, if you've got 3 extra seats, you're already paying the teacher the salary, you're already paying the teacher assistants, you're already paying the cafeteria worker. That's actually, even if you don't even charge a tuition, it appears that that's a $6,000 windfall to us.
It increases the average daily membership.
Right. I mean, we get that money.
We get that money, right.
But our expenses didn't really change. Now, that can be on a case-by-case basis, because if you're at the threshold, and say that teacher was maxed out at 25 and you added another and you have to hire another teacher, then that's a whole nother ballgame. But I think under our current policy, I think it's built in that these have to be approved by the superintendent, excuse me. So, I mean, and of course, we should, and that would seem to be, and I don't know whether that's being done in practice, but it would seem to be, that would be part of the thought process of, okay, I've got some extra seats here, I can handle this. That's not going to increase my overhead at all. That's just more money for my school versus.
Membership goes up, and
Right.
more money comes in.
Or versus I'm right there on the line, and if I add this student, my overhead goes up because I got to hire another teacher. And I mean, it would seem to be that
Right.
we would be able to do some business, cost.
To Mr. Moore's
Decision.
point, that's where we would start to,
And that would seem to
Yeah.
be that's something that the administration could take into account
Correct.
to make sure that we're not, being penalized. So it may not be, I mean, I definitely think we need to make sure that we are not losing money in the situation. But like I said, I think when you think about it on a case-by-case basis, it may not be that we're losing money. It may be that we're actually getting a lot of money. But help me if my logic is wrong,
You know,
Mr. Moore. You're giving me your logic is
Mr.
wrong.
Bates, I was right there with you when you said maybe not losing as much. I'm not quite sure we're making a
Yeah.
lot of money, though.
Yeah. It's,
Well, walk me through my analysis, though. If you have the situation, if you've got 3 extra seats, and you get an extra $6,000 in BEP money, I mean, where would your expenditures increase? You're not having to pay for a bus driver because they've got to provide their own transportation. I mean, I guess maybe if they're at free reduced lunch or something like that, that might actually increase. But other than that, it seems like your expenditures are fixed, whether you've got those empty seats or you got the seat. And again, I'm very often I miss things, so you can point those things out to me. Thank you.
I'd like to say that I agree with Mr. Moore, but also I've got concerns. You said we've got 14 students, and part of these, you said one in particular hadn't paid anything.
Yep.
And then others haven't paid what they were supposed to. How long do we plan on letting that go? I mean, that's a violation of our policy in itself, and if they're not willing to contribute anything, I don't have any sympathy. I think my constituents are the citizens of Murray County, and that's the ones that we go to for our funding. It's not the people of Hickman County and Giles County and wherever that just don't want their child to go to their local schools. I've got concerns that if they're not contributing enough, it's bad enough, but when they're not paying anything, it's even worse.
I'd like to reframe this for you. So, again, you have 3, this impacts, so we have 3 that have not paid in full. 2 of the 3 have made payments. They're paying. They just haven't completed their payments, but they have the end of the year to pay. And then you have one student where the parents are struggling to make the payments. They want to be in our system. They think this is a better situation for them, but the parent is struggling to pay. We have just recently sent the second notice. Upon the third notice, which will go out on Monday, we will have no choice but to withdraw if we don't get anything by the Friday. So we're going to send out a notice on this coming Monday. If we don't have at least one payment by Friday of next week, then we have no choice but to withdraw. But we will withdraw the student, and they will have to go back to their county. And we've made the parents aware of that in writing. But again, we're only talking about one child that has not paid anything. The other 2 have paid, but they're, still working to complete their payments. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Mr. Bates, and I don't think it's costing as much money as we're saying we're costing, but there's another way to look at charging him $2,000 or $3,000. If that's a lot of money and they're working in this county, well, now if they say, I don't want to pay $2,000 or $3,000, I think I'll just move to Murray County. There goes our tax base right up,
Mhm.
So there's another way to look at it. I don't think they should be allowed to come here for nothing. I don't know if we should charge them so much that they can't come here if they wanted to. And if we have the room, you don't want to price yourself out of existence. So,
Still less, 2,700, still less than a private school tuition.
right.
Okay, I guess to answer, and I didn't want to jump ahead, I knew Mr. Dudley had his light on, I didn't want to jump with it. But I agree with you, Mr. Bates, I really don't care what the number is. I just want to make sure that our starting point is the cost, whatever that is. If it turns out that we're actually above that, that's fine too, and I'd rather have discussion, but my starting point, but when I see numbers that say our per pupil cost is $9,000, I'm just looking at what's in front of me. If that's not accurate, that really doesn't reflect what the actual costs are, then maybe we need to look at that in a different way. My only point when I asked the first question was, whatever that dollar figure is, that should be the starting point, that this is what we've determined. Whatever you guys determine our costs are, really doesn't matter to me. And that's our starting point. I just do not want to be taking a loss on whatever that is. That would be my goal.
$9,106.20 comes from the state website, the report card on the state website.
And we know the state is always so accurate with their figures.
On the money, Mr. Moore.
I can find like three different numbers at three different
I've
state
seen
websites.
several.
On the money.
Or at least
On
two,
the
I
same
know.
state websites. One other question I did have, previously we had gotten a report on, and this may be an easy answer, but I had a report showing that we had a total of 55 out-of-county students in the entire county. Now, I'm assuming the difference between the 14, or is it 15 you're talking about?
14,
Between the 55 and the
14 out of county
14.
who are not employees. The 50,
Okay, so the other
the 56
41
are employees.
Okay, so we have that many more that are all employees. So that okay,
employees,
that
correct.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But again, that was my only point, and I think we're on the same page here. Just we're kind of talking about numbers, and I think Ms. Powers was on the same boat. As long as we're not losing money, that's just where I start to have a really big problem, that we are taking money away from our current students to let somebody else come here, and that's not what I was charged to do when I was elected. It's not what this body was supposed to do. And if we decide to offer them a gift of letting them come here and enjoy the wonderful things we're doing here, that's fine, but it's going to come at least covering the cost. And personally, I would probably have a surcharge on top of that, because I think it's worth it for us to deal with the issues. So, but that's where I stand on that.
And I wholeheartely agree with Mr. Moore. I think that needs to be the starting point. Make sure that we're not losing money in the situation. Again, for me, I'm just still trying to wrap my mind around where the state comes up with their numbers, because I know I'm spending $90 million this year. I mean, I know that, and I can do the math. So where do they come up with these other numbers? I don't know.
Add in the federal money.
It may be.
Yeah.
Title I, add that in.
State, local, federal, probably a combination of all three.
Yeah.
State, local, federal.
I don't know. But again, and also go back to, I do think that from a fairness standpoint, I think we need to look on the case-by-case basis. Maybe it's not as, cut and dry. I think when you look at it from that standpoint. The other thing is, I know our policy says that it cites some statute, so I don't know whether we are required to allow out-of-county students, or is it just a permissive type statute? Did you all happen to be able to look at that?
Several counties that,
But that's what I'm trying to figure out, all these TCA citations down at the bottom, what that's about.
Yep.
So, I don't have my book.
I just am curious, when you kind of mentioned a case-by-case basis and such, like, do we have the capability to do that? I mean, I guess the student comes to the parents come to central office and say, hey, we live in Giles County, we want our kids to come to Murray County. Okay, do they get to choose which school? Do you choose which school once they come into our county? I mean, I'm just curious if a case-by-case is feasible, and, I'm in full support of it. Employee of our county, a teacher bringing their children across the county line, that should be a benefit to them. I'm 100% supportive of that. But, 55 kids being absorbed, we really could start tipping the scales to need a new teacher. 55 is a big number. And
Right.
that is a benefit to those teachers I want them to have. But, could we do a case-by-case? How does this work?
That's how it's been happening, kind of on a case-by-case basis. They apply through the, there's an out-of-county form, and they apply for the school that will be closest to them. In many cases, it's often the school where the parent works, whatever's closest to where they work. That's what we've seen. That's the trend that we've seen based on these applications. The 14 that we've seen is usually typically where the parent works.
Well, has it ever occurred that they said, hey, I want my child to go to Woodard, but Woodard's at capacity, and you say, well, we'd love to have you in our county, that's not an option.
And we always let them know that's based upon seat capacity. So students who are zoned to those schools get first priority. They're the first priority. That's always based on seating capacity. But the rule that we like to think of is this: as long as we have kids in seats, we're earning income. We're earning revenue, which is why I've been fighting so hard for attendance. If we have kids in seats, we're earning ADM dollars. And so we get kids in seats, we earn revenue. And then if we look at increasing the cost for those who want to come across the lines, it could potentially be lucrative. But I mean, as ADM dollars go up, again, to Mr. Moore's point, your debt service kind of goes up. So there's a trade-off somewhere, and I understand both points. At some point, you want to make sure that you're coming out ahead, but I think that as we go one-to-one, we're going to be attractive. This county is going to be very attractive, and people will want to come across the lines to be here. And we have to decide whether or not we want to allow them in, and whether or not, this is the best move for our county. But people are going to want to come here. Right now, this puts us on the cutting edge. No one will be doing this around us, and we're doing it first.
And as General Motors adds 850 employees, people from Nashville start driving. They want their kid to go to Spring Hill Elementary School, Marvin Wright. Oh, and by the way, you're in digital curriculum. You get a laptop. Get in the car. Let's go. We're heading down to Murray County.
You got
and the
cutting
back
edge
and
STEM
forth.
programs popping up, project-based learning going, and then every kid gets a laptop. People will want to come here.
Yeah.
So this is a good thing for our county. We just have to decide, what the parameters are going to be, how to manage it. Because again, if they're in seats, we get ADM. And that's what we want. We get ADM dollars. So, but again, we incur debt service also at some point. It's kind of a,
On the other side of the coin, if you raise tuition, say to $2,750, how many kids are you gonna lose at Hampshire?
Well, I talked to two parents that currently have their kids, they're from Hickman County, and they have their kids at Zion. And they're debating on leaving because they can get just this quality program and they can save some money.
If I remember right, last month or 2 months ago, when we were talking about all of the attendance and that, I forget, but it was a large number of children that were at Hampshire were out of county simply because they live closer to Hampshire than they do their own school in their own county. And it was quite a large number, if I remember right.
Yeah, go ahead.
so we have in the whole, what were you going to say, Stan?
Hampshire has 4 applicants, according to the report that I got from your department last Friday.
At a zone, yeah.
Those two CA codes are just saying that we do have the right to take students from other counties, and it just kind of sets out the procedure for that.
And just in case you guys are wondering, we have 646 kids in county who choose to go to different schools out of the zone. So we have 646 kids that choose to go somewhere else in county. That's not their zoned school, so just an FYI.
That's this calendar year.
This calendar year, yep.
It's up over 100 kids from last year.
Yeah.
Sorry. So looking at the policy that's in front of us here, I do see at number 2 there, it says, it obviously says pay a tuition fee established by the board. Just, where is that? Is that in this policy or is that somewhere else?
No, sir, it's never been written in there. That's a strange thing. It's been more of a procedural thing.
So-
Parents will call the district office, and they will get quoted an amount.
Okay,
And,
so I
they
guess
pay
just looking at the
amount.
policy, the only thing I would say is that either needs to be, either taken out or the policy, the actual dollar figure needs to be put in, one or the other. I mean, I don't, however it needs to be handled, but obviously that's not correct. Because
Correct.
I'm not finding it anywhere in there, so.
Yes, sir.
Tuition fee may be charged to pupils residing outside the city or district shall not proceed per pupil or per annum the amount equal to the amount of funds actually raised and used for school purposes from the city or special school district sources during the preceding school year. So I guess we can't charge more for local, what we get for local. What's fund, the local portion, which is around $2,700. We charge, probably, pretty close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we would do about teachers coming from outside the county and they want to bring their kids to Murray County.
Yeah, we allow that. It's in the, yeah, it says, employees can have their kids here, yeah.
So the teachers that's bringing their kids, say, from Giles County or Marshall County to Murray County, they're getting an extra benefit that the other teachers are not getting. Because what you were saying there about, there's a lot of teachers that live in Columbia that teach in surrounding schools, and they don't have to pay out of zone.
We used to actually charge tuition to those teachers, and last year this board approved not to do that as a benefit to teachers. They are our employees, that's a benefit to them, and if we can retain quality teachers.
Yeah, I understand all that.
Whether they live in Murray or Giles, but they work in Murray County, we're gonna allow them to do that.
There's a lot of, there's a lot of systems in Tennessee that are doing that. Nashville just enacted that about 5 years ago. They used to be charging tuition, and Dr. Register got rid of it. He wanted Nashville to be attractive to people coming to work there, not a detriment.
I don't care what amount we finally settle on, but one of my notes, and I agree with Mr. Moore, I think it should be in the policy how much we're going to charge. There's nothing in the policy that says how much. There's no amount in the policy at all. And I think that should be added to the policy.
All right, well, we have a recommendation from Dr. Woodard for it to be $2,000. And then we've heard numbers up to $2,700. Would anybody like to make a motion to add a specific tuition amount into the policy? Mr. Moore?
I can't make a motion, but I would still like to see some more thought put into what that number should be. And again, I don't know if we know tonight what that should be, whether it should be 2,000 or 2,700.
Would you like us to bring you two options? One that breaks zero, and then a secondary option? If there are people on the board who don't want to go for the break zero and kind of baby step it?
Sure.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right. We'll wait for further information from central office on that one. The next policy is policy 6.2041, I believe, school attendance zones. And this was actually, I wanted this on there as well since we were talking about out of county, because we did get some numbers just in an email back on August the 18th, I believe, that had what out of zone, our out of zone numbers, and it was 618 at the time. That included some out of county as well. But as we're looking at capacity issues at our schools, you know, there's some schools that we're adding on to that have out of zone, or that we're considering adding on to, that moving forward in that direction, and they have out of zone. So I think it was more so to kind of look at what our process is for how we approve who gets to go out of zone. I think at this point it's been mostly principal driven. Is that fair to say?
It starts with principal.
Okay.
Principals will approve or deny based on seating capacity or based upon the enrollment seating capacity, based on yes behavior, grades. So, and then, you know, the parents have the right to appeal if they, because they will get a letter once the principal denies, and send the form out, send the parent a letter saying they've been denied, and the parent has the right to appeal. That goes to me as the director of pupil services, and then I would make a final call. And again, that's based on seating capacity, so.
Mr. Moore?
And I had talked with Dr. Marzak about this as the Marvin Wright issue came up. I feel very strong that this is an issue that is bigger than an individual school and needs to be addressed at a higher level than just the individual principal saying yes or no based on their individual school's capacity. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we establish that to the principals. So the principals don't really establish it. We tell them at what threshold they can take or deny kids, as well as when it's getting close to the threshold and a parent still wants their child to come in, they know full well, we could call you November 2nd and say, sorry, you've got to go back to your school of zone because 5 more kids that are in zone just moved in. And if you want that, that's your choice as a parent, but know that that option is on the table.
Well-
Like, for example, I'm an out-of-zone parent. My middle child is out of zone. I know that if Mount Pleasant experiences a boom and all of a sudden more kids come in, it could be February 2nd. I've got to take her to her school of zone. And that's the conversation that we had together, I had with her. And she said, no, okay, that's fine. And we went.
And I appreciate that, but I still think, I'm going back to what our mission, our vision are. And telling a child, even if it's per policy, that on November 2nd, they've got to change schools, it's just not what's best for the child. So
And
while
that's
it may be
ultimately-
policy and procedure, I just don't think it's the best way to go if we can avoid it. And I think there are steps we could take to come up with a better procedure. And I'll point back to Marvin Wright. When we made a very difficult decision to do some rezoning, personally, I see no reason why we were letting out-of-zone kids come back into that school. It does not make sense.
Yep.
And I have yet to find an answer that lets it make sense. And this goes straight back to that answer. And while I know, and we're running that issue again this year, where we may very well, and I bet we will have asked kids to leave that school this year because we're going to have kids moving in.
And parents knew full well that
And
that's a
I understand
possibility.
that, Dr.
And that's
Martin.
ultimately a parent's choice.
Well, I know it's their choice, but it's still our charge to make sure that we are doing what's best for the children. And asking a child to leave in the middle of the year of school is when we could have planned better, is just bad planning on our part. So I would rather see us move so we're making some better decisions on the front end where we're not letting that happen. If that means the threshold needs to be lower or change from what it is now, especially after we've taken specific action and we know we have what I would consider a crisis of the population in that area, then we should change that, whether it's procedural or whatever. We should be looking at that because there's no reason we should have to ask that child to leave the school. We could have just said, you know what, you should probably stay at the school you're zoned for before the year starts because we knew that was coming.
And we have parents that say, we want to come anyway. And ultimately,
I think that's where
a parent's call.
I think that's where the professional side of what goes on here needs to take over, and we need to be making that call for them.
Okay. I disagree with you, but okay.
Well, and I agree with Mr. Moore. I think if we are faced with a capacity issue at a school, that needs to be on the table. And that would seem to be one of the first things that we would look at if we're anticipating, we're going to really be tight and we may not have enough room this coming year. That discussion should probably start early on by that principle of, okay, we need to start preparing for that, and we need to go ahead and maybe start having those conversations now. And it gets back to what I think we've talked about quite a bit, that a lot of people can handle things if they have a lot of advance notice. Is when we react. It's like in the middle of the year, and that's not good for anybody. So
Sure.
I think it just goes back to being proactive and kind of trying to anticipate these things and trying to plan these things well in advance.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Well, when there's a school that you really want to go to, as a parent, you'll bend over backward and you'll bend the earth, the wind, and the trees to have your child go to that school, even if you're there for 3 months, because you want your child in that academic program, and you know that's where they're going to flourish, and that's what you're going to do as a parent. And so we established that 5% threshold to allow it up to 95% capacity. That's what we do. And we have parents that I'm one of those parents. I drive 20 minutes out of my way twice a day to take my daughter to that school because that's a place that she wants to go. And as a parent, I'll bend over backwards for that because it's something that's academically beneficial for her. Do I want her to be put out in the middle of February, middle of November? No. But while we're there, it's a phenomenal academic program for her. And there are multiple parents in this district that feel the same way.
Mr. Dudley, did you have your light on?
Well, this is a problem that's been around for a long time. The board tried to tighten up on it with their last superintendent, but we ultimately left a lot of it up to the superintendent and his staff and the principals. But, think it's gotten out of hand. You know, some of them, you know, we're letting the Indians run the schools. You know, just 'cause a parent comes in ranting and raving, you know, we need to say, no, you're zoned for this particular school, unless you can come up with a real specific reason why they shouldn't attend the schools they're zoned for. You know, we gotta have more than just your want. You know, people have the opportunities to buy homes if they want to be zoned for Marvin Wright. That they bought homes in Marvin Wright community or location. And then it's unfair to them to find out that out-of-zone students are taking up those seats. As Mr. Moore pointed out, it was tough last year making the decision to send a lot of those kids to Howell. You know, and if we got out-of-zone seats being occupied, it's unfair. And you know, 600 out-of-zone is too much in my opinion. Well, that number needs to be cut way on back down.
Well, as we move forward, we're going to have more out of zone. When we look at Hampshire and them being an agricultural model, when we look at Mount Pleasant being an arts model, those won't be our last academy models around the district. And more parents will choose to drive their children to other schools in our district. I hate to say it, but I see that number doubling in the next 3 to 5 years. I see us having close to 1,200 to 2,000 out of zone as parents choose to move their children to different models and have different educational opportunities for their kids that may not be offered at their school of zone. So that number may actually increase. But out-of-zone students will never trump zone students. Zone students trump out-of-zone students.
Well, I think that they've already trumped, like I say, our moves
No.
made last year, I think, proved that.
I'll just piggyback on what Mr. Dudley was saying. I think the thing about, and Director, you weren't here for when that particular
Yep.
rezoning issue was handled, but
Read about it.
when we made some decisions and then a principal decides to accept certain kids in out of zone while other people follow what we've asked to be done and go to Randolph Howell, they're like, why is my neighbor across the street getting to go to another school? I mean, it seems like we're cherry picking at that point. And when those
By
principals
fact,
are
it was
sitting
principal
in,
and interim superintendent.
I'm sorry.
By fact, it was principal and interim superintendent that allowed it.
Well, both of those people were sitting in the room when we discussed what we were doing, and we were the ones sitting up here making a really tough decision.
Mm-hmm.
So for a parent to come in and then raise Cain or whatever and say they're going to pull their kid out, I'm sorry. I mean, that was a tough decision, I think, for all of us to make, and it felt like we were being undermined by staff at that point.
I know.
So going
know.
forward, I think we don't want to be undermined if we're up here making these tough calls. I mean, you know, you get paid the big bucks to make those calls, not us.
Exactly.
So we're delegating a lot of that responsibility to you.
Exactly.
And so hopefully in the future, you and staff will keep that in mind and be
Always.
supportive of the decisions that we make. Would be how I would look at it. Mr. Moore?
Okay, I know everybody wants to go home, but I mean, to your point, Dr. Marzak, I mean, I know when you say, and I fully believe you, if we progress with the academy model,
Yeah.
we may have that many, but I think it's all the more important for us to have better constraints and better numbers than just this 95% rule, because otherwise, again, I really don't, I know you've heard, but I don't think you realize really what took place when we rezoned 120 students and half of them ended up at one of the other schools that was already in the problem zone.
I know. I know. And from what I've read and from what I've talked about, I mean, hindsight's 20/20. Had I been in place, I probably would have recommended something different as your superintendent, but it happened. It is what it is. But I do want to provide parents the opportunity. For example, we have Navy ROTC at Central High School. We don't have ROTC at some of our unit schools. If you want to be in the ROTC, and there's room at Central High School, by all means, go to Central High
Well,
School.
but
I want to offer parents those opportunities.
And I appreciate that, but again, I think what I'm saying is, as we start looking at, and we're gonna have Dr. Register come back and look at these capacity numbers.
Yes.
We are going to actually start paying really close attention, especially as we have growth. And this is gonna be a countywide issue of what our numbers are, what our capacity is at each one of these schools. And having these moving targets that are just kind of shifting around whenever they feel like it are gonna be, that's why I say that 5% you're talking about, leaving
Yep.
that just as the only threshold that you're looking at. I think you're gonna need a broader margin than that, because I think you could have a much larger shift. If some of these things really take off and what you're looking at, it could throw things off in a way that we can't plan for. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but all of a sudden it starts looking like now we've got, well, I'll give you an example. We knew this was coming with Marvin Wright, but we are spending millions of dollars, or about to spend millions of dollars on adding on to Marvin Wright and fundamentally changing that school by increasing it by over a third of its current size.
For the interim,
that's a
for the
big
short term.
deal.
Yes.
But it's not just short term. I mean, that's just an example of the kinds of changes that these little pieces affect. So that's the only reason I say just using a 95% rule and letting the parents just decide what they want. I don't think we as an organization can handle that. I don't think that's wise of us to do, and I think we're going to have to do some better planning.
95% is the number we used at the time because that's what we have and that's what's available. As we move, as we get nimble, those numbers will change. You can't grow and keep everything the same. You have to change as well as things grow. So it may go to 94, it may go to 93, it may go to 97. We'll look at those numbers and we'll make that recommendation, and that's what Mr. Gaines and I will tell the principals. The threshold this year is now 93%, or it's 90%, or it's 96%. We'll definitely make that call. We don't want to put kids out in the middle of the year because we know that's very disruptive to the educational process. And we look at that. We looked at it when I came on, and we looked at it this year when we began, and we'll do it the same way at the beginning of every single year.
Just real quick, just to piggyback on what Mr. Moore's saying, I do think that could be a case-by-case basis, what is the appropriate number, because that could really depend upon that particular zone or area, how things are escalating. 95% may vanish in one area like that, 95% in another area may be, that's a comfortable cushion. So, I think you are getting better at that. And I think when Dr. Register maybe brings his information and maybe the tools that he has, maybe we'll, be able to be more nimble on things like that.
Yes, sir.
Any action on this item? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion, do we have a
Oh, I
second?
thought he had something to say.
All those in favor? You can leave.